Okay, take a look at these massive, tightly interlocked stone walls. I mean, they are incredibly precise. For centuries, these very walls guarded a sprawling, completely abandoned city of victory that remained a deep mystery to the outside world. We're talking about a place of immense wealth, exotic trade, and staggering architecture that somehow ended up reduced to silent ruins. Welcome to this explainer. Today we've got a really exciting focus. We're breaking down a fascinating historical chapter, all about the Vijayanagara Empire. We're going to take a bit of a time-traveling archaeological tour to see exactly how this incredible imperial capital was built, how it thrived, and ultimately, why it faced such a devastating collapse. Here is our roadmap for today's chapter. We're going to start right in the ruins, meet the rulers who drove the economy, walk the fortified streets, explore the royal center, and finally, witness the city's sudden fall.
So, diving right into part one, rediscovering a lost empire, unearthing the ruins of Hampi.
You know, this massive empire, which stretched all the way from the Krishna River in the north down to the extreme south of the Indian Peninsula, had to be painstakingly pieced back together. For centuries, it really only lived on in the local oral traditions of the mother goddess, Pampadevi. And actually, that's where the local name Hampi comes from. But then, in 1800, the first survey map was prepared. Fast forward to 1836, and epigraphists began collecting dozens of inscriptions from the temple walls. Just 20 years after that, in 1856, photographers arrived to visually record the monuments. So historians literally had to collate local memories, foreign traveler accounts, and physical stones just to bring the city back to life. Now, the guy who really kick-started this early rediscovery was an engineer and antiquarian named Colonel Colin Mackenzie. He brought the site to light in 1800. And what's absolutely fascinating here is his motivation. He believed that studying Vijayanagara's institutions, its laws, and its customs would actually give the English East India Company useful information to make governance of the colony easier. He was literally looking at the past to better manage his present. All right, moving on to Section 2, Rulers, Rivalries, and Trade, the political and economic engines of the empire. To really grasp how Vijayanagara got so incredibly powerful, we have to travel back to its founding in 1336 by two brothers, Harihara and Buka. And let me tell you, they immediately found themselves in a highly competitive neighborhood, fiercely fighting over fertile river valleys and super lucrative overseas trade routes. The local terminology of the era perfectly sets the stage for this. The rulers in Orissa were known as the Gajapati, which means Lord of Elephants. The Deccan sultans to the north were the Ashvapati, the Lord of Horses. And the rulers of Vijayanagara, calling themselves Rayas, were known as the Narapati, or Lord of Men. These weren't just fancy titles, right? They directly reflected the core strategic military strengths of each kingdom. So warfare in this era relied heavily on effective cavalry. That meant the horse trade was everything, absolutely crucial. Initially, Arab traders controlled this vital import of horses. But then, local merchants known as Kudurai Chettis actively jumped into the exchange. Everything shifted, though, in 1498, when the Portuguese arrived on the west coast. They brought superior military technology, specifically muskets, and instantly became major power players in this constantly shifting political landscape. A real game changer. Okay, let's step into Section 3, inside the fortified city. We're looking at wealth, spices, and bustling bazaars. Beyond just military might, Vijayanagara was a metropolis famous for its immense wealth, exotic high-value goods, and precious stones. And we actually have first-hand accounts from foreign travelers who were just completely blown away by what they saw. The Portuguese traveler Domingo Paes wrote, "What I saw from thence seemed to me as large as Rome and very beautiful to the sight." I mean, hearing a 16th century traveler compare this Indian city to Rome, that creates an immediate, relatable sense of scale and awe. He also noted the beautiful groves of trees, the lakes, and these intricate conduits of water flowing right through the urban center. Paes also left us this really vibrant description of the city's commercial heart. Just imagine walking down a broad, beautiful street where the bazaars were literally overflowing with rubies, diamonds, emeralds, and pearls. And the crazy thing is, it wasn't just for the ultra-rich. Every single evening, there was a fair where you could buy ordinary horses, citrus fruits, grapes, and wood. It was this bustling, thriving economic engine where participating in trade was a supreme status symbol. Which brings us to Section 4, Marvels of the Royal Center, Unlocking the Architecture of Power. This specific area housed over 60 temples and grand structures. It brilliantly illustrates the physical spaces that were built specifically for state rituals. The sheer number of temples tells us that projecting power through religious patronage was incredibly important to the Rayas. Take the Mahananami Diba, for instance, which Domingo Páez famously called the House of Victory. It's this massive, beautifully sculpted structure featuring two platforms, one right on top of the other. Our source chapter notes a really vital architectural detail here. While the temples were built entirely of masonry, these grand secular structures had solid masonry foundations, but their superstructures, the pillars, beams, and towers, were made of perishable materials like wood, decorated with brightly painted plaster. That's why today we mostly just see the stone bases. We really have to use our imaginations to picture what once stood on top. Let's see how this builds our understanding of their architectural influences. If you compare the intricate arches of the Lotus Mahal with the massive, symmetrical domes of the elephant stables located right nearby, what do these distinct buildings tell us about the people who built them? Well, the interaction between the Vijayanagara kings and their rivals, like the Deccan sultans, led to a fascinating sharing of ideas. The builders of Vijayanagara adopted these varied concepts and techniques, and they transformed them to create entirely unique structures that projected their very own imperial identity. Finally, Section 5, the fall of Vijayanagara, from peak prosperity to total abandonment. So, how does a city as large as Rome just suddenly cease to exist? This shocking collapse really started with internal strain following the death of the great ruler Krishnadeva Raya in 1529. Rebellious military chiefs caused a lot of turmoil, and by 1542, control shifted over to a new lineage, the Auravidu. But the fatal blow came from shifting military alignments. The ambitious maneuvering of Vijayanagara's rulers eventually caused the Deccan sultanates to form an alliance against them. In 1565, the chief minister, Ramaraya, led his army into the Battle of Rakshasi Tangadi, also known as Talikota. His forces were completely routed by the combined armies of Bijapur, Ahmadnagar, and Golconda. The victorious armies marched right into Vijayanagara, sacked the magnificent city, and within just a few years, it was totally abandoned, forcing the empire to shift its focus far to the east. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to really think about. What do these ruins actually tell us about the people who live there? You see, buildings convey the ideas, the symbols, and the cultural context of their patrons. They tell us about defense, trade, religion, and how ideas spread like wildfire across borders. So the next time you look at the scattered stones of Hampi, don't just see a fallen empire. Try to see the merchants, the kings, the architects, and the intertwined histories of a vibrant civilization that's still whispering to us through the centuries. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the past.